the point where this comes into or gets to be the newer pieces of information, it happens when you come across expressions that are multiple terms in absolute values. And so if I were to take the absolute value of, let's say, root 3 minus 1, in this particular case now, if you have to evaluate this without a calculator, which you guys are going to be asked to do, the way that you treat this is you decide which of these cases it fits into. So step 1, you identify the value of what's inside the expression and choose, is that value positive or negative? That's all you need to know. Does it fit in this uppercase or this lowercase? So is the square root of 3 minus 1, that whole expression, a positive value overall or a negative value? It's a positive, right? You know that root 3 is greater than 1 because the 1 in a square root is square root of 1. So root 3 is between root 1 and root 2, or I'm sorry, root 1 and root 4. So it's somewhere between 1 and 2, so that'll be a positive number in here. So because we see that this is the case, we can now apply the top rule to this whole expression. And so we do that by just writing the expression, root 3 minus 1, as itself. Okay, and so that is your simplified form, taken out of the absolute values. Okay, let's see what happens if we were to would have switched those terms. Okay, if we'd have taken the absolute value of 1 minus root 3. Okay, so now you do the same thing. You identify the value, whether it's positive or negative. So is the value of 1 minus root 3 positive or negative? This one is negative, right? The root 3 is greater than 1, so this, when we subtract that, it becomes a negative value. Therefore, you're going to apply the rules that are on the bottom. Okay, and that rule is to take the opposite of the entire term. So there's a couple ways to think of that. You could take the opposite of the whole expression, 1 minus root 3, and then distribute. So a negative 1 minus becomes a plus root 3. So we could do it that way. And what you're going to see me do is, when I rewrite these, I'll usually write the positive term first for this. So what I would do is if I evaluate the expression as being negative, so I know I need to change the sign of each term, I'm just going to change each term's sign individually. So if I change a 1, it becomes a negative 1. And change the negative root 3, it becomes a positive root 3. And so I would write it in this form. Both of these are the exact same thing. It really doesn't matter which one you choose, but I will tend to use this bottom form. And just basically switch the terms, keep the negative between them. All right? So you are going to be expected to do this. This is one of the parts that winds up causing the most problems. There's two parts in this section that tend to cause problems. This is one of them. Okay, so I want you to see, can you evaluate these without a calculator? Looking at sample problem number 10, please. All right, so when you're looking at this set, a couple things that get confused often. Okay? A lot of students will misinterpret this form. Okay, this is not absolute value of negative 14 times negative 8. Okay? What this is, you just work from left to right. So if you're solving A in this example problem, the absolute value of negative 14 is 14 minus 8, and that gives you an overall sum of, or difference of 6. So that would be your solution. Okay, if we move on to B. Okay, so B, in this case now, you are multiplying. Okay, so you take negative 4, and you're going to multiply that by the absolute value of negative 8, which is 8. So negative 4 times 8 gives you an overall negative sign product of 32. So you get negative 32 as your product there. Okay, be careful when you're working with those. Don't assume something is being multiplied when it's not. And be careful in looking those over. All right, now C winds up being this type of problem right here. We have an irrational number and a rational number inside an absolute value. So what we want to do is we want to determine, is pi minus 3 greater than 0 or less than 0? It is greater than or equal to 0, right? So we're going to use that top rule. So this top rule is you just write the number itself. So pi minus 3 is your solution. And then our final example here, D, we have the same thing, a rational and irrational number inside that absolute value. So you determine, is the given expression 2 minus pi negative or non-negative? 2 minus pi is going to be less than 0. It's a negative number. So now we're going to use this bottom rule. The bottom rule is just to change the sign of each of these terms. So the 2 becomes a negative 2, the negative pi becomes a positive pi, and that is your simplified form.